Is there a count? Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Welcome to Seerah Saturday. Every Saturday, inshallah ta'ala, in Ramadan. Perhaps it can continue after Ramadan as well, alhamdulillah. I like the name, Seerah Saturday. And Saturday, I think, is the day around the world where everyone has a weekend, basically, alhamdulillah. And sitting down to study on Saturdays, to study the seerah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what better could we do on this day, alhamdulillah. In these sessions, they're going to be short sessions, and the approach we're going to take, because there's two things when it comes to the seerah and how people study and teach the seerah. So you have some people well, this is actually most people when it comes to the seerah, they're going to teach it, meaning telling you the story that happened. So here we talked about the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, or those of you who are following on Facebook, on my page, I put the Battle of Hudaybiyyah. And you're going to see why sometimes some of the scholars call it Ghazwat Hudaybiyyah, the Battle of Hudaybiyyah, and some call it Sulh Hudaybiyyah. But actually it was the Ghazwa of Hudaybiyyah, and you're going to see why it was a Ghazwa, why it was a battle. It's something amazing. And this is what when you study into the seerah, and you look into the benefits you gain from the seerah, sometimes it's absolutely amazing, and some of the things that happen. But the problem is, and why we're not truly benefiting from the seerah, is that most of the time we studied the seerah on the first approach I was talking about, which was just to tell the story. Okay, this happened. The Prophet ﷺ went for Umrah in Mecca, and that's all beneficial. You can, while you're hearing the story, you're going to benefit a lot. But if we actually stop and reflect on what we gain and benefit from the story more, and put more emphasis on that, it becomes actually more beneficial. So that's what we're going to do, inshallah. We'll briefly tell the story, inshallah ta'ala, and then we're going to focus on some of the things that we benefit and that we gain from the story, inshallah ta'ala. When you look into the story of Hudaybiyyah, how did it happen? It happened with a dream from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and all of the companions, they missed Mecca and they wanted to go for Umrah. And the Prophet ﷺ saw that they went to Mecca and that they were making tawaf around the Kaaba. So he informed his companions, alhamdulillah, because the dreams of the prophets are truth, that they will be going to Mecca to perform Umrah, alhamdulillah. So when they went to Mecca, or they prepared themselves to go to Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, and this is one of the main lessons as we're going through, I want you to focus on these lessons, he took his precautions. He made sure he was prepared. And this is one of the great lessons that we gain from this is that the Muslim must be prepared at all times. So what did he do in preparation? First of all, he sent Busr ibn Sufyan al-Khuza'i, he sent him as a spy to get information of what was happening in Mecca, what was Quraysh up to, and once they hear the news that him and his companions are coming for Umrah, what is their reaction and what are they going to do? Something very interesting when I talk about this towards the end, the benefits that we gain from it, is that Busr at this time was a mushrik. He was a polytheist. He wasn't a Muslim. But the Prophet ﷺ used him to gather information. I'm going to come to that, inshallah, some of the benefits we gain from that at the end. And he also ordered his companions to carry their weapons, meaning they said Seerah al-Rakib, and it may be just the basic swords and basic things, some arrows and what have you. They didn't take heavy or artillery with them, but they had their weapons. And just in case, because it was the custom of the Arabs that if someone went for Umrah, that they wouldn't be attacked, they'd be safe. But nonetheless, to play it safe, because they had been in war with Quraysh and had problems with Quraysh, to play it safe, they decided to, he told them they have to take their weapons with them. So they came and they're armed as they're going. And there's 1,400 of the Sahaba with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he took from his wife with him, Salama radiallahu anha. As they started to approach Mecca, they heard, sure enough, that Quraysh, they got the news that Quraysh was not going to allow them in, and that they start prepare soldiers with Khalid Mulid to forbid them from entering into Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, his companions, and especially Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, what does he think that they should do? What do they think that they should do? Should they continue? Should they change their plan, change route? And this is then also one of the benefits that we gain from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, is that he would always take the shura, the opinions of his companions radiallahu anhum. So the Prophet ﷺ, he asked Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, that we're going for Umrah, and it's all right to go for Umrah. And, he said, we don't want to fight anyone, but if someone comes in and tries to forbid us from coming in, then we fight whoever tries to forbid us. And they continued on their way. As they came and they stopped at a place known as Hudaybiyyah. And they stopped at the place known as Hudaybiyyah before entering. And they sent Uthman radiallahu anhu. And the job of Uthman, when you look at it, and he came to Quraysh and he told them that the Prophet ﷺ calls you to Islam. So it was da'wah right away. He called them to Islam, to become Muslims, to leave. They know it's the truth. Leave what you're upon from falsehood and come to Islam. And then he told them that he's coming for Umrah. He's not coming to fight. He doesn't want any troubles. Just going to come for ibadah, for Umrah, and then he will leave with his companions. And something happened, a major event during that, which was they delayed Uthman from leaving. They delayed Uthman from leaving. And when he was delayed, and at first some of the companions thought maybe he's made his tawaf, because if they gave him permission, he makes his tawaf and then he's going to come back. But the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I don't think that he's going to make tawaf when he knows that we're trapped here, and he's going to come back and tell us. And then after that, there was a rumor that was spread that Uthman radiallahu anhu was killed. There was a rumor that was spread that Uthman radiallahu anhu was killed. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded them, and he said, who is ready to go into fight? Now you killed our brother. We didn't come to fight, but now it's time to go to war. And subhanAllah, look at this. And Uthman, no doubt, he's someone who's important from the Sahaba. But many times throughout the Seerah, the Sahabiyyah, who when she was in the Jewish market selling, when they tied up her dress, and when she stood up, it exposed her awrah, exposed her private parts. And what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? And out of respect for this Muslim lady, he took them to war. And the same thing here, one Muslim who was sent, and as you know from the customs all throughout history, that the messenger who was sent, he's always safe. And killing the messenger, this is an act of war in all customs. So here he went as a delegate, as a diplomat representing his state, and to see that he's been killed, the Prophet ﷺ ordered that they go and that they fight. Who pledges allegiance to me? That we fight, and either to the victory or to the death. And all of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum came and they gave bay'ah, allegiance to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam under the tree there in Hudaybiyyah. And at the end, after all 1,400 had given him bay'ah and given him allegiance to fight for the vengeance of their brother and for justice, the Prophet ﷺ took his two hands and he said, and this is for Uthman. Uthman, who couldn't give the allegiance, now this is for him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the verse in Surah Al-Fath, verse 18, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that Allah is pleased with the believers. Pleased with the believers, why? Look at the ayah. إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ, if they give their bay'ah, they give their allegiance to you, and from underneath the tree. Subhanallah al-Azim. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when they pledged their allegiance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was pleased with them. And he said about them, Allah, and look and pay attention to the ayah, something very beneficial that we gain from it. فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ, so Allah knew what was in their hearts. He knew the sincerity they had to stand up and fight for justice, to stand up and fight for the vengeance of their brother, to stand up against oppression, to stand up against falsehood. Allah said, فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ, he knew what was in their heart. So what happened? فَأَنزَلَ عَلَيْهِمَ السَّكِينَةَ, فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ, so he sent the sakina, the tranquility, down upon them. وَأَثَابَهُمْ فَتْحًا قَرِيبًا, and he blessed them with a near victory. And we're going to come inshallah to the other verses that came about this victory as well in a bit inshallah ta'ala. At this time, Quraysh had sent someone who wasn't suitable to delegate with the Prophet. Then they sent after that Suhail ibn Amr. And Suhail ibn Amr is a very important individual in this story from several aspects, subhanAllah, very interesting. Suhail ibn Amr, he was the khatib of Quraysh. He was one of the ones, he was very eloquent in how he spoke, very well spoken, and he was a very, very good public speaker. He used to represent Quraysh and he would speak on their behalf, and he was very known for his lectures or talks or bayans or whatever that he would give in Mecca during that time against Islam and against the Muslims. But he was also someone who was very highly intelligent and very well spoken, and he had manners as well. So when the Prophet ﷺ saw him coming, he said, "Inshallah, your affairs are going to be easy now." And his name is Suhail, which means ease. So he said, "Inshallah ta'ala, your affairs are going to be easy now." And he knows him that even though he's someone who's spoken negatively, that he does have some good, and he has manners, and he's well spoken in his stances. So he came and he sat with the Prophet ﷺ, and then they had the agreement, which was later known as the Sulh, the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah. And we mentioned that some people call it the Ghazw, the battle, and we'll show you why in a bit, inshallah. So this is why they call it the Sulh. They reached a treaty, and from the things in this treaty were that the Muslims would not make Umrah this year. They would go back to Medina, but they would come back next year for what was later to be known as Umrah al-Qada, the Umrah of Qada, and the making up of the Umrah that they missed that year, and they would come back with no problems. And that there would be a treaty for 10 years between the two, that the battles would stop. This is very, very significant. Where they mentioned some of the benefits, very significant in the benefits that we gain from this treaty. So the 10 years, there would be no battle between the two. And they also agreed that anyone who became Muslim or from the Muslims who were in Mecca who wanted to migrate to Medina, that they would not be allowed to do so. And that's very, very difficult to accept. Nonetheless, this is one of the agreements the Prophet agreed to. And also, they agreed that anyone who wanted to come under the rule and as an ally to be under the protection of the Muslims or the Quraysh, they would do it. And from the thing, if someone had left from Medina, wanted to come back to Mecca, they were allowed. That was the issue in the other one. But if they wanted someone to go from Mecca to Medina from the Muslims, they weren't allowed. So many of the Sahaba, they found some of these conditions very difficult, especially this one. And if someone becomes Muslim and he comes to Medina and he can't enter into Medina, they found it very, very difficult to accept. From then, even Umar al-Khattab, and even Umar radiallahu anhu, he came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, aren't we the ones who are on the truth here? Aren't we upon the haqq? And he said, yes. And he said, and aren't they upon batil? Aren't they upon falsehood? And he said, yes. He said, then why do we accept to be less in our affairs? Why do we accept to be less and accept something that's lower? And we're the ones who should have the strength here because we're the ones who are on the truth. He had difficulty accepting it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, do as you're told. And then he went after that to Abu Bakr and said the same complaint. He said, he's Rasulullah, he's the messenger of Allah. Remember, and there's wisdom behind what's being said. So don't let shaitan get to you. This is what happens sometimes. We don't sometimes see the benefit. And this is what we want to see from the story. Sometimes you might not be able to see what's happening. And this is one of the great lessons from Hudaybiyyah. And you don't see what the good that might come. You can't find any good in the situation you're in, but then the good, it comes after that, subhanAllah. So at this time, the Sahaba found it difficult, as we mentioned. And then the Prophet ﷺ, after the treaty was signed, he told them to get out their ihram clothes, meaning to shave their heads, to take off the ihram, and they had brought with them the hadi for slaughtering in Mecca, and to slaughter their sheep or their camels, whatever they had with them to slaughter, to offer as a sacrifice, and then they will return to Medina. The Sahaba were very reluctant to do that. And their reluctancy was more so, obviously they didn't want to disobey the Prophet ﷺ because they were always right away. As soon as he would say something, they would do it. But here they had a type of hope. They had a hope that the Prophet ﷺ would, or something, the wahi, the revelation would come down, and that they would be allowed, because their hearts were really attached to making the Umrah. And then on top of that, they didn't want to seem weaker in front of Quraysh, because they had beat them in Badr before, and they believe they have the strength, and also because they're the people who are upon the correct belief, and these people are upon kufr, upon disbelief. Therefore, it's difficult for them to accept the fact that they're going to take something what they see to be lower, and to agree to these conditions. But the main thing was that they were hoping that maybe a revelation would come, and that they would be changed, and they would still be able to make the Umrah. So when the Prophet ﷺ saw them very reluctant to implement his command, which was not something normal from the Sahaba, he became troubled. He became upset with that, and he went into his tent with his wife Salama radiallahu anha. And this is the importance of Allah, one of the great benefits that we gain from the story, the role of consulting one's family and having a good wife who, mashallah, she's intelligent, she understands, and how she helps you become a strong and powerful man. You always hear the the expression behind every great man is a great woman. And the great woman, by the way, we always look at it as the wife, but it actually starts being the mother. And usually you find every great man, he had a great mother, and then inshallah a great wife after that. Alhamdulillah. So all of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they were great women who supported him. And she was there to support him, Salama radiallahu anha. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, go out and implement in front of them. Go out and you slaughter your sacrifice, your animal, and then you shave your hair, and they'll see it. And they'll implement right away. And sure enough, the Prophet ﷺ went out, he sacrificed his animal and started to shave his hair. And the Sahaba, they said, in the narration, they started to race to do it. They were racing so much to implement and to follow the command of the Prophet ﷺ that they said that in the narration, they almost killed one another, meaning they almost trampled one another to be able to implement the command. SubhanAllah, Allahu Akbar. This shows how the Sahaba would race to do the khayr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them and make us from those who follow in their footsteps. Ya Rabbil Alameen. This is a summary of what happened in the story of Al-Hudaybiyyah. What do we gain and what do we benefit from that? And quickly, some of the benefits. Busr ibn Sufyan, we said he was a mushrik at this time. And Busr, and this proves, as Imam Ibn Hajar mentioned, and also Ibn Qayyim mentioned, that you can take the assistance of a non-Muslim and benefit from him if he is someone who is trustworthy. And at the time of battle, or other words, and also we gain from this, and taking your precautions. The Prophet ﷺ, he used a spy to gather information and to know what's going on. So this obviously in a political realm, and generally speaking as well, not on a way that's haram to spy on others. Not this. We're talking about this is a time of war. And so at the time of war, or the well-being or safety of yourself or your community of Muslims, that to gather information, this is something that we gain from this story. Also from the things that we gain is that in the story, and some of the things I mentioned, I might not have mentioned in the story at the beginning because I just gave you a very brief summary of it. But the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed Salat al-Khawf during that time just to make sure that himself and the Muslims weren't harmed, that they were safe. This shows us the importance of staying safe, taking your precautions once again, but also it shows us the importance of the Salat. And that even at the time of a battle, of a war, that the Muslims, and they still have to pray their prayer, and this shows us the status of the Salat in Islam. And also from the things that we gain, in the story teaches us, one of the things is that Al-Mughira radiallahu an, Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, that he stood next to the Prophet ﷺ with his weapon, like guarding him. And there was many things that you can benefit from that. Obviously, taking precautions once again, this is one of the things that we benefit and one of the things that we gain. But also from the things that we benefit and we gain from this is that putting the fear into the hearts of the enemies as well. Also, one of the things that we gain is that you have to show strength, and you have to show that we're ready and we're prepared. And this is obviously is mentioned in the Quran and mentioned in several things in the Sunnah. We can see this where the Sahaba radiallahu anhu and the Prophet ﷺ, they showed their preparation to their enemies so they could see the strength that they had. Also from the things that we gain from it is that when Uthman was sent radiallahu anhu, and he delayed, some of the people thought maybe he was given permission, he started his tawaf and he'll come later. The Prophet says, no, I don't think that he would do that because he knows that we're here. And this shows us the issue of husn al-dhann. Always have good thoughts about your brother. And we know that even Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, if you hear any word that comes from your brother and you think maybe it's not correct, think maybe he has an excuse. Always look for an excuse for your brother. So this is one of the teachings we gain from this story as well, the implementation of that. The Prophet ﷺ, he knows Uthman. He said, no, I don't think that he would do something like this because he knows we're here trapped and we're waiting for him. So I don't think he would start his tawaf if they said, go ahead, make your tawaf and then we'll talk to you. No. So he had husn al-dhann and thought good about his brother. And this is how we should all be as Muslims. From the lessons that we gain is how to deal with rumors. And especially in the days that we live in, subhanAllah, we're in need of this. How the rumors spread online, how the false media spreads, how they spread the false lies, these fake news channels that we have, and how they're spreading this, and even the current situation that we're in, and how they're putting the fear into the hearts of the people. And even though there is an issue, but they're making it much bigger than what it is, to put fear into the hearts of the people to reach their goals and their agendas. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from their evil. But it shows us the stance of the Prophet ﷺ when it came to the rumors, how he accepted, how he took the rumor, and also how he dealt with it as well. And you look at it and how he dealt with it, alayhi salatu wasalam, And first of all, what is the objective? And they wanted to, because the Kuffar of Quraysh, they're the ones who spread the rumor that Uthman was killed. And they got back to the Muslims because they wanted to put fear into the heart of the Muslims. Also, they wanted to make their situation, where they're not stable, there's confusion, there's chaos. Maybe it could even come to some differing between the Muslims. Some say fight, some say don't fight. So a group goes to fight, a group goes out, so they don't stay as one. So there's many objectives behind spreading these types of rumors and this type of false media, just like in the days that we live in, subhanAllah. The false media, even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the fake news, it's the same exact thing, subhanAllah. How did the Prophet ﷺ deal with this rumor? And how did the Sahaba radiallahu anhum deal with it? It actually brought them closer together. It brought them closer together. It didn't separate them like they wanted to. It didn't divide them like they wanted to. It didn't make them weaker. It actually made them stronger. And this is how the Muslim should be when this type of evil comes, is that it actually brings us closer together and it makes us stronger. It makes us stronger when they spread it. We know, subhanAllah, now, the issue of the fake news and the lies and the propaganda they spread, but yet we still tend to believe it. And wallahu musta'an. But obviously this story here is teaching us how we need to be towards these things as Muslims. Also, from the great lessons that we gain is the importance of positivity even at the time of difficulty. Positivity even at the time of difficulty. And if you look, for example, and when the Prophet ﷺ, when Suhail came, he said, inshallah ta'ala, the affairs are going to be easier now. The affairs are going to be easier now. And this, they're at a time where it's about to be a battle. They're about to fight, is what it seems that they're going to fight. But yet he still sees this, inshallah, the affairs are going to be easy. It's going to be better, inshallah ta'ala. So always being positive even at the times of difficulty. Also, the importance, one of the key lessons that we gain from this story, the importance of hearing and obeying to the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. That when we have something that has been confirmed in the Quran or in the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even if our minds cannot comprehend it, even if we cannot understand why, it's very important as Muslims that we hear and we obey. That doesn't mean we don't go and look for the reason why. We don't dig deeper. No, we dig deeper. We look into it. And that's very important. We have to look and see why these things are happening. We have to, we can look into it. Look, what is the hikmah behind it? We look into what is the hikmah. And we say, why, what is the hikmah behind it? That increases your iman, that increases your pain. No problem with that. But let's say now something comes to us and we don't understand it. But we still say we hear and we obey. Is it confirmed? We hear and obey. When they came to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, and they said, did you hear what your companion said? That he ascended through the skies on the Isra wal Mi'raj. He never heard it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he said right away, if he said it, then he was being truthful. If he said it, then he was being truthful. And that's why he was given the nickname of a Siddiq, the one who believed. He believed in truthfulness in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we hear from the Sunnah of the Prophet, we say, Sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey. Even if our minds can't comprehend it. But that doesn't mean, as we said, you don't look for the hikmah, you don't look for the wisdom. Because that actually can benefit you. And we're going to see like now. And you couldn't see at that time what happened to the Sahaba. Even many of them couldn't see the wisdom behind it. But it became clear, as we're going to mention in the verse. Because what happened in the end? What was the verse that came down as they're going back to Medina after they signed the treaty? The verse that came down, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. That indeed we have opened for you, and we have given you the clear victory. We have given you the clear victory. We're going to show you, inshallah, now an example of that, inshallah ta'ala, with some of the benefits that we gain. Umar radiallahu anh, after the Sulh al-Hudaybiyyah, he had great regret about what he had said, and being a bit overzealous in his stance. And he said, because of this, he said, I still, even though he made tawbah, he made istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, I started to fast more, to give more sadaqah, and to pray more. And he said, all of that hoping that Allah would forgive me for what I have done. Even though, inshallah ta'ala, that if someone were to repent and be sincere, that would be sufficient, inshallah. But here, Umar radiallahu anh is teaching us an important lesson of implementing what is taught to us in the Quran and the Sunnah, and that is to follow up the bad deed with a good deed, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the Hadith, وَاتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. Follow up the bad deed with a good deed, it will wipe it away. And as Allah told us in the Quran, وَأَقِيمَ الصَّلَاةَ طَرَفَيَ النَّهَارِ وَزُلُفًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. To establish the prayer and in the time of the day and later and towards the evening time, verily the good deeds, and al-hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at, that the good deeds wipe away the bad deeds. From the lessons that we gain from this story is something that happened which was very, very difficult for the Prophet ﷺ and very, very difficult for the companions. And that is the son of Suhaib bin Amr, who had become Muslim. He had two of his sons, Abdullah, who had become Muslim before, and then Abu Jundal, who would become Muslim later. Now, Abu Jundal, he was known to be very obedient to his father before Islam. So when he became Muslim, his father couldn't take it, and he tied him up. He tied him up and trapped him in the house and wouldn't let him out. Hearing what was happening in Mecca during that time, that the Muslims were there, he was able to escape from his house, even though he was still tied up. He's still chained up, and he was able to get out of the house in his chains. And he came and he threw himself in front of the Prophet ﷺ and in front of their companions. Khalas, I'm here. Save me from the oppression that I'm in. He's being oppressed in his religion. But what happened is the Prophet ﷺ had just signed the treaty. And the first thing that Suhail ibn Amr said to him, he said, now here's the first test. Are you going to implement what you agreed upon or not? He said, you have to give him back to me, because we have an agreement. Abu Jundal, hearing this, found it very difficult. He said, how can you turn me back to the mushrikeen? They're harming me. They're trying to force me out of my religion. And he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, even though it's very difficult for him to see this, and very difficult for the Sahaba, he said, we have an agreement with them. And he said, we don't go against our agreements. And he gave him back to the mushrikeen. But then he said to him, to make him feel better, he said, have patience and endure what you're going through. He said, Allah is going to make it easy for you and those like you, inshallah, soon, inshallah. Hey, don't worry, inshallah. The khair, the good is coming. Prophet ﷺ, once again, being positive at a time of difficulty. Don't worry, inshallah. It's going to be difficult, but inshallah, we're going to find a solution for you. There's two things that we gain from the story, main things. First of all, or we could say three things. The issue of being positive at the time of difficulty you mentioned, but also the issue of fulfilling our obligations, our treaties. If we have an agreement, even if it's with a non-Muslim, even if it's with the enemy of Islam, if we have an agreement, that we fulfill it. And also from the things, and it shows just the general principle as Muslims, that this is what Islam teaches us, is to always fulfill our commitments, no matter who it might be with. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises the mu'mineen, the believers, all throughout the Quran, الَّذِينَ يُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ, those who fulfill the promises they made for Allah, those who fulfill their obligations. And يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, those that fulfill your obligations, fulfill your commitments. This is what it means to be a Muslim. And that's why all through the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises those individuals. From the great lessons that we gain from this, in the story of Salama radiallahu anhu, when she told him to go and implement, and they will follow you, and he did it, alayhi salatu wasalam, this shows us that the implementation of Islam and the actions, when we call to good, acting upon it is actually stronger than speaking about it. And always people ask me, what is the best way to give da'wah to non-Muslims, or even to give da'wah to Muslims? And we always say that you implement Islam within yourself, and people see the beauty of Islam within yourself. Without saying one word, this is the best way we give da'wah. So when they saw the Prophet ﷺ do it, they strove to do it. So the same thing in the house, that if our children see us striving to do good, they're going to do good. If they see us striving to pray at the beginning of the time, they're going to come up praying at the beginning of the time. If they see us being negligent and being lazy with our prayer, then also they're going to be lazy and negligent with their prayer as well, because that's what they see us doing. And if they see us becoming angry easy, they're going to become angry easy. If they see us cursing, they're also going to curse. And that's the crazy thing, is sometimes we might curse when we get angry, but then if they do it, we expect them not to do it. Hey, you can't say that. You can't do that, subhanAllah. So, now we're asking them not to do something, and we do it in front of them. So if somebody now, if someone has their phone and it falls, what usually happens? What do most people say? Subhanallah. They say, "Oh, sugar," huh? Or some other words, some other four-lettered words. But then when our kids take it from us and they come and implement and do the same thing, astaghfir haram, maybe sometimes, and who they learn it from? They learn it from you, man. You're the one who's doing it. That's what we have to realize. And the implementation is actually stronger than the words. This is one of the great things and one of the great lessons that we gain from this story. Also, the teacher, the one who was a role model, those who was a public figure, and your actions speak louder than your words, subhanAllah. Also, from the things that we gain from this story, is that what's important is, and what is significant is what the end comes to. Not that the ends justify the means. Don't misunderstand that, because that's not it. But the important thing is that sometimes we might not see the good in something, but alhamdulillah, when the good comes in the end, this is the important thing. Alhamdulillah. And one of the things that the story shows us is that we might not be able to see the good. We might not be able to see the good, but the end result was good. Alhamdulillah. And even if we might, sometimes disagree with something with some of our brothers with this, but then the good comes from that. We have to stay positive and look at that good that comes from it. And a lot of times in a lot of the affairs, you don't see the good now, but then when it comes in the future, like, wow, man, that actually, I understand now. Even sometimes when it comes to dealing with some of our teachers, some of our sheikhs, sometimes they make ijtihad. And this is a very important lesson. Pay attention to this. And a lot of the times when it comes to our teachers, they might make a stance. Myself, another one of the du'at, another one of the mashaykh, there's a certain stance that they make. Maybe with their local government, maybe with a certain fiqh issue, maybe with something that's happening with the ummah, and they make a stance, and we're like, that's a weak stance. You have to do this. You have to be with the haqq. You have to speak the haqq. You can't make a stance like that. That's weak. But then a few years later, we're like, wow, the sheikh, what he was saying, that he was right. That's good, It's really, really beneficial what he mentioned. Now I understand why he took that stance. So the same thing here that we gain from this story is that you might not see that good now, but you see it. So always be positive and always say, if we go back to the teachings of Islam, when it comes to our teachers, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the qadi, the one who offers the ruling, the hukum, that if he makes ijtihad and he tries to reach the haqq, he's not trying to reach batil or falsehood, but he said he reaches the truth, then he gets 2 rewards. But if he makes a mistake, he still gets 1 reward, because he did it on ikhlas, on sincerity. And so when we look at our mashaykh and our teachers, even like now and the situation of the ummah, a lot of people are being silent. Why are they speaking out? Why are they speaking the word of truth? Okay, so in certain countries and certain things, if you do speak out, you go to prison. So is it better for me to have one stance where I speak out and then no one hears from me for the next 5 to 10 years or for the rest of my life? Or if I can continue to do good and remain silent on some certain things? And it might just be remaining silent on some certain things, especially in certain times. And right away, I think many of us, a certain scenario popped into our head in the day that we're living in. And certain scholars who aren't saying certain things about certain things. But if they were to give it an opportunity, trust me, they'll say it, inshallah. They'll stand up and they'll speak the truth about the situation that they're in right now, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah make the affairs easy for everyone and help us to stay firm at the times of difficulty and help us to say the word of truth, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Also, from the things that we gain, and he's found this is the great political lessons here in this story, subhanAllah. And there's a lot of good political lessons in this lesson, subhanAllah. But from the things that we gain from this story is that from this treaty, Quraysh officially recognized the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims and their country. Because before they were trying to look at them like, oh, they're nothing, they're this. They didn't respect them, they didn't recognize them. So now they officially recognize them, and because now you have 2 delegations from 2 countries or 2 states who are sitting together to come to a treaty. That means they've officially recognized them now. And this is very, very important in the history of Islam. The recognition now, they've been recognized. They established themselves. This is in the 6th year of the Hijrah. So they've been in Medina for 6 years now. They've been established, well established. a very strong state they have now. But now it's officially recognized by the biggest power of that time, or in the Arabian Peninsula, which is Quraysh. So they officially recognize it. Secondly, that Quraysh, that the fear that people had of Quraysh, it immediately was dissolved from this. Quraysh didn't realize this right away, and because from the treaty is that any group that wanted to join the Muslims and become an ally of the Muslims and to become under the safety of the Muslims or under Quraysh, they could do that. They become allies. So right away, certain groups, they came like Khaza'a, and they went under the Prophet ﷺ and under the Muslims right away. So they were no longer scared of Quraysh. So that's also one of the great things that we gain. Also, one of the things that we gain and we benefit from this very beneficial is that when the mushrikeen, the polytheists, they were mixing with the Muslims and they were with them on that day, that they were able to benefit, or they were able to benefit and to learn about Islam through seeing the Muslims. Not just what they hear, and a lot of what they hear is falsehood, a lot of what they hear are lies. So now they're seeing firsthand, being able to see the Muslims and see from them as well. Also, you're going to see this when it comes to the Umrah of Qada. When they make up the Umrah next year, they're going to be able to be around the Muslims in Mecca and see directly from them. And there's a very important dawah lesson here for us, and that is obviously the importance of spreading the dawah amongst the non-Muslims in their countries itself, so they can see the Muslims and mix with the Muslims and see it for themselves. Not what they hear in the media, for example, nowadays, but when they actually are around Muslims, they can see. And also, and even just the general thing of mixing with them, because sometimes maybe they're in our countries, so we invite them over for a tea, we invite them over for a meal, and let them see how we are as Muslims. Not what they portray about it on the media, but actually what we are called to, and what we are as Muslims. Not what they say about us. So this is one of the benefits, obviously, that we gain also from this treaty. Also, after the treaty, many things came, and when Allah called it a fath, and this is back to the issue of it, and as some of the scholars called it a battle, and we're going to tell you why in a minute, inshallah, something very interesting. But one of the great things that they gained from this is that the Prophet ﷺ, they were able to then, now they have 10-year treaty, and they don't have to worry about watching it back from Quraysh all the time and the attacks of Quraysh. Now they can focus on other things. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had a problem in Khaybar with the Jews there, and a danger coming from them all the time, and them gathering all the time, wanted to come and overthrow and to raid Medina. So he heard they were going to try to raid Medina, because they thought now that there was a treaty that they thought that the Muslims became weak. So before they could attack them, the Prophet ﷺ, he came and he conquered Khaybar and took it from them. And that was also a major victory and a very important turning point in Islamic history as well. And also he started to, at that time, to write and send letters giving da'wah to all of the kings and the rulers all around the world, telling them and teaching them about Islam and calling them to Islam. When it comes to the battle and the virtues of the battle of Al-Hudaybiyyah, Imam Ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that there's no battles from the battles of the Prophet ﷺ that are closer to the battle of Badr in virtues, more so than the battle of Al-Hudaybiyyah. Al-Hudaybiyyah is the closest battle to the battle of Badr when it came to the virtues. He said many people say Uhud or say this, but he said the battle of Al-Hudaybiyyah is the closest when it comes to its virtues and the khair and the blessings which came from this battle. That's why Allah called it Fathan Mubina, and he called it the clear victory. And something amazing, and Al-Bara radiallahu anhu, from the Sahaba, he said many people say that the Fath, the conquering we hear about all the time, that it was the conquering of Mecca. But we say that the Fath, the conquering, was actually the conquering of the Bay'a Ridwan, the allegiance of Ridwan under the tree, and the day of Hudaybiyah. He said this was actually for us, this was the Fath, this was the conquering for us. And something amazing, I was reflecting on this as I was preparing this, that Imam al-Zuhri mentioned a new type of warfare that happened in this battle. And that's why they called it a battle, subhanAllah. And he said that before, he said Islam opened up the door for this new type of warfare. Because before, he said that the battles were always, when two sides would come together and they would fight, and the one who was victorious is the one who would win. But he said here, this battle taught us that battles can be won with words without even fighting, subhanAllah. The battles can be won with words without fighting. And this is the importance of diplomacy and having strong politics. And this is one of the things when people come and talk about Islam is not suitable for this time, and we have to have this, Islam is just like for the masjid, 5 prayers and these type of things. And then the politics of the country need to be a secular type of system. We have it all here. You look at it, and that's why the scholars of Islam wrote about in detail as-siyasa ash-shar'iyya, the Islamic politics in detail. And we see it here, the diplomacy. The battle is to win the war. Now, if we can win the war without even fighting, alhamdulillah, this is a victory. And Allah called it himself, and he fath mubina, a clear victory. And he mentioned something very, very important. He said in those 2 years after this, because you have between the battle of Hudaybiyyah, or this treaty in Hudaybiyyah, and then the conquering of Mecca, it was only 2 years. This is in the 6th year of Hijrah, and then the 8th year of Hijrah, they're going to come and conquer Mecca. So only 2 years until this amazing fath, or this amazing victory of the conquer of Mecca came after that. He said that more people entered into Islam in these 2 years than the amount of Muslims during that time. So they doubled or even became more during that time. The people who entered into Islam, huge amount entered into Islam during these 2 years. And Ibn Hisham, the famous author of Seerah, he said, in the evidence for what Zuhri is saying that it's true, he said that the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Al-Hudaybiyyah, he had 1,400 men with him. But when he came for the conquering of Mecca, he had 10,000 men with him. So it shows you what happened, as Imam al-Zuhri mentioned, during those 2 years, how everyone entered into Islam, and how the Muslims actually became very strong during that time. That brings us to an end, inshallah, of today's episode of Seerah Saturday, focusing on some of the benefits that we gained from the Battle of Hudaybiyyah, or the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, as it's well known as well. But many of the scholars call it also is with the battle. And now you understand why it's called a battle. Alhamdulillah, how battles can be won, alhamdulillah, without even fighting, inshallah. And I think this is one of the great benefits that we gain from the story, along with the other benefits that we mentioned. Allah knows best. Allahu a'lam, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad, wa jazakum Allah khairan. If the admins can let us know, are we going to be having questions now, Q&A, or what is the plan? Okay, yeah, so there's a question here now on the screen for me. If anyone has questions here, also ones who are with us on Instagram. Yeah, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ, I don't know if he wasn't frustrated with accepting the treaty, because he looked at it as being a good thing. He accepted it with no problem, ﷺ. Obviously, there were some things he didn't like, as we mentioned, obviously, but I wouldn't describe it as being frustrated. Obviously, he's doing something, and from the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But so the question makes sense: is it acceptable? I don't really understand the question, honestly, so I couldn't answer it. But the issue of being frustrated, I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say he was frustrated. There were certain things that he didn't like, but obviously he's doing it for the overall benefit of the Muslims of the Ummah, and for in his strategic plan. We saw that and what happened later from it. And how it was actually a victory. It was actually a great victory, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. And a lot of times, and this is something I really benefited myself, honestly, even from preparing today, is that all the time we look at the victory, Allah mentioning here, that what's going to come 2 years later. But actually, as Al-Bara radiallahu anh mentioned, and even Imam al-Zuhri and all them mentioned, that fath happened right there. And this fath happened there, and then another fath came after that as well. So both of them are forms of fath, of conquering and victory. But the original fath had happened right there during that time, and the Muslims became victorious during that time. Is there any questions? I don't know the admins, brothers and sisters, if there's any questions. Does it mean it's more important to uphold agreement? Yeah, no, this depends. This is obviously this issue of upholding agreements. And when it comes to human rights or things that go against Islam, This is very important because the general principle in Islam is that there's لا طاعة المخلوق في معصية الخالق, that we don't obey the leaders and that, or anyone, and that which is disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, there might be certain political things that are made from certain politicians and that have good, and because there's a difference. There's a politician who has good in him and he has stances which support Islam and the Muslims, and then he takes a stance which we don't understand, we don't agree with. This person, we stand behind him. But it's someone who's evil in general, he's always against Islam and the Muslims, and then he comes and takes a stance which is against Islam and the Muslims, and people come and want to defend him and say, oh, yeah, but it could be, we don't know, maybe he's in a position of power, maybe he's doing it for the betterment and the good of Islam and Muslims. Astaghfirullah. This is obviously not the case, because he's someone who's doing evil towards Islam and the Muslims all of the time. So this is something that we would make the qiyas and analogy on those who are doing evil. A lot of times the people who are doing evil and corruption upon the earth, they try to take the Sulh of Hudaybiyyah, the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, and they try to make it as a means for them, for their weak stances, or for their stances of dhulm, of corruption. And that's not the case. And so and we're talking in Islam, when you have someone who is upon good, and then they were to come and do something, yes, this is the person. But someone who's upon evil, and the person's upon good, yes, we have good thoughts about that perhaps he's doing it for a reason we don't understand. And there's a few, I don't want to get into politics. I try to stay away from politics, so I don't, I can continue delivering my message, inshallah ta'ala. But if you look, for example, I think a certain individual, without mentioning names, we might look at as being an individual who has stood up for Islam and Muslims in the days that we live in. So I mean, many practicing Muslims have respect for such an individual. If he were to come with a political stance which we didn't understand, we didn't agree with, we would say that perhaps there's something we don't know. Because at that level of hukum, of being the ruler, well, there's many things that we don't know. And there's many things that I always say this to the brothers and sisters as well, that we say, if I was the ruler, I would establish justice, I would do this. And you really don't know until you sit on the chair of being the ruler. It's difficult. It's not as easy as you might think it is. So this person, or a person like that who's doing good, we say perhaps they were forced in this situation, perhaps there's something that we don't know. But someone else, another individual, the opposite of this one, for example, who is a corrupter upon earth, who is spreading corruption, who is spreading evil, who has stances against Islam and the Muslims, and then he comes and makes something against Islam and the Muslims, it wouldn't make the same ruling about that one. So inshallah, that answers that name, but to be very careful when it comes to that. An interesting question the sister's asking about how can one become a better Muslim by learning the Seerah. And obviously, if we truly want to be true Muslims and good Muslims, we have to go back to the Seerah. And I think two really things that are missing in our lives as Muslims, and it's one of the main reasons we've gone astray, we don't put enough emphasis on the tafsir of the Quran, understanding the Quran and acting upon the Quran, and upon the Seerah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the objective of the Seerah, and that's what I mentioned at the beginning, we said we're taking a different angle. Even many of the lessons I had on my Facebook lives before about the fiqh of the Seerah. We mentioned the story briefly. I mean, I have tens, if not hundreds of volumes of books of Seerah in my library, at least, if not 100, maybe, 60, 70 books of Seerah. I mean, we can go back and go into detail about the story and mention the different narrations. But what's really meant and what we really need is the lessons that we gain from the Seerah. So this is how we need to approach the Seerah now, is what are the lessons? Just like now, we mentioned the story, and we gave you guys like 15 different lessons that we gained from this story. And they really, really, deep lessons and practical lessons that we can implement in our lives, inshallah ta'ala. So that's how we truly benefit from the Seerah, is that we read it true to know the information. There's barakah to know the information. And we should know the Seerah in detail, but at the same time that we need to read it in order to act upon it. And I recall that some of our dawah team in Ireland, they would attend with us the weekly Seerah lessons that we had, and we're doing them on the Facebook Live as well. and they were like, wow, how close it was to the situation, because in Ireland we were a new established Muslim community, not many Muslims there. So you would see that and the place we had to teach was like a little house, and one of the places we would teach was like a room we had on top of the halal store there. So we're teaching these lessons, and we're in this place just like Dar al-Arqam type thing. Even though we had freedom in Ireland, it was different. We could do it openly, but nonetheless, and we're starting just from like the same foundations. There were so many lessons that we were taking that was so practical to our everyday life. It was so practical to our dawah team and them giving dawah. So this is how we need to approach, inshallah, studying the seerah, inshallah ta'ala. I don't know if there's any other questions from the live feed there in Malaysia. I'm looking on my Instagram for questions. Any other questions, sister, there in Malaysia? Instagram, a lot of waves. Not too many questions today. I saw some questions, but I'm not seeing any now. Everybody waving. Another question is, do you have a book or online transcript write-up? I don't, but what I would recommend for the English language, you have Sheikh al-Salabi's book. The one it's printed in 3 volumes. That's probably the best seerah book that's written in the times that we live in, and very, very good, you know. And at the end of each lesson, he mentions, or each part of the seerah, he mentions what are the benefits that we extract. So similar to what I was mentioning, I don't know, I didn't read his book that I read from other sources, but that is one of the best books, inshallah, that you can benefit. It's available in the English language. If you could, maybe if someone could add the link, inshallah, you could add the link, inshallah. If you write it in Sheikh Ali Salabi, it's printed by Dar al-Salam originally. So if you find that, that's probably the best book in seerah. There's another book about seerah written by Sheikh Mahdi Rizqallah, also printed in English. That's also very good, and it talks about some of the benefits, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. That brings us to an end of this week's episode, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue next week with the Seerah Saturday, inshallah ta'ala. Until then, may Allah accept from all of us our Ramadan and help us benefit, inshallah ta'ala, from these daily lessons. May Allah bless all of the brothers and sisters who are behind the scene, behind the screen. I'm just preparing us, and all of the admin work, all of the ones who are, who are propagating and, advertising for the lessons, and all the IT brothers and sisters. These are the ones that are truly heroes that no one sees, but they're the ones who are making it all happen, organizing everything. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them. Don't forget them, make dua, because a lot of times you guys make dua for us, but you forget the ones behind the scene. They have just as much of a role as we do, and if it wasn't for them, we couldn't be doing this. So jazakumullah khairan, and barakallahu feekum, and see you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi